So we're joined today by Josh Reinstein and Danny Seaman, who is back with us again. Josh Reinstein has been the director of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus since its inception in 2004. He is also the president of the Israel Allies Foundation. Mr. Reinstein is the producer and founder of the hit TV show Israel Now News that is broadcast to 35 million viewers in 191 countries around the world. He recently launched a second TV show called Land of the Bible. He was named as one of the 50 most influential Jews in the world by the Jerusalem Post. Mr. Reinstein also owns and operates JSR International Marketing, an international marketing and public relations firm based in Israel. It is a pleasure to have Josh with us today.
Well, thank you, Moshe. Yeah, just to give you a background, a little bit about what we've done over the last 20 years to prepare us for this moment. As you mentioned, I'm the director of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus, and the caucus was established in 2004 in an effort to build direct lines of communication and cooperation with Christian leaders around the world. We realized it was Christians, not countries, that were standing with Israel, and we had to find a way to work together with Christians in order to mobilize support for Israel. And in 2006, in Washington, D.C., in Congress, they decided to launch our first sister caucus, the Congressional Israelites Caucus. It's made up of Republicans and Democrats who support Israel. And that led to a domino effect of caucuses being started in parliaments all over the world. Today, we have 53 Israel Allies caucuses in our network, over 1,500 legislators. And what they do is what we call faith-based diplomacy. It's when people take their biblical support for Israel and turn it into real political action. Over the last few years, you've seen faith-based diplomacy all over the world. In fact, faith-based diplomacy is the most important weapon Israel has in its diplomatic arsenal. There are embassies now in Jerusalem because of faith-based diplomacy. Christian support led to anti-BDS legislation in 37 states in America, anti-Semitism legislation around the world. It's even the reason we have observer status in the African Union. So we are seeing incredible success from working with Christian allies around the world. And as you mentioned before, in war, there's the military front, there's the media front, but no less important, maybe even more important, is the diplomatic front. And what we've done is we've used our network of 1,500 legislators to build a iron dome, a diplomatic iron dome around Israel. And what we've seen over the last 3 weeks has been astonishing. We've seen legislators come together and take stands for Israel in individual countries. Now, a lot of people are looking around and saying, hey, what's happening at the UN? But the UN is a loser. We don't have the votes in the UN. We never will. The majority of countries in the UN are dictators and tyrants. But in individual countries, we have a huge opportunity to create a political situation where they do stand with Israel, and that's what we're doing. We're seeing political rallies and Christian rallies all over the world, from Liberia to Uganda to Australia to Moldova to Guatemala. A real showing of support. Christians are taking to the streets, and they're putting pressure on their religious leaders to put pressure on their political leaders to stand with Israel. And so we've been launching a number of different initiatives, but the main initiative we're working on now, and was just released today, was a resolution calling for sanctions of Iran. Everyone knows that Iran is the director of this whole fight. Iran funds, gives military training, supports Hamas, Hezbollah in the north. Also, Danny mentioned about the Houthis in Yemen. This is all being coordinated by Iran, and it was coordinated by Iran at this time specifically because they were trying to throw off the peace deal that Israel was going to sign with Saudi Arabia. And so they've been coordinating this. There's been reports that 500 of the Hamas attackers were training in Iran. They've had 4 meetings in the month leading up to the attack, yet no one is talking about Iran. This is all Iran. And indeed, in this fight, if we were going to do it right, we're not only going to have to take out Hamas and Hezbollah, but we're going to have to take out Iran's nuclear capabilities. So we launched a resolution in 15 European countries, including the EU, to sanction Iran, to put the RAJC, the Revolutionary Guard, on their terror list, like America did in 2019. We're doing a similar resolution in the United States Congress. And we're pushing this around Latin America and Africa. We're putting a big press on putting the pressure on Iran. There's a lot of pressure on Israel right now, but the pressure should really be with Iran. When you talk about what does Israel need right now, it's 2 things. Number one, it needs time. This isn't going to be a short battle. We're going to have to not only uproot all of Hamas, wipe out the terror tunnels, release the hostages, completely decimate all the membership of Hamas. But then we're going to have to turn our attention to Hezbollah. Hezbollah has 150,000 guided missiles pointed at our communities. They potentially could do a terror attack 100 times the size of what we've seen in October 7th. So people need to be patient and give Israel the time. And secondly, we need resolve. Our leaders need to have the resolve to get the job done. We can't allow this situation to continue the way it was. And so in order to get the time and strengthen our leadership to have the resolve, we need diplomatic support. And that's really where Christians come into play here. Our Ruby Rivlin, when he was the Speaker of the Knesset in our first meeting, said that there are 1 billion Christians and 14 million Jews, but together we're 1,014 million. And that's really what we're seeing. We're seeing support in countries where there are no Jewish populations because Christians are coming out and standing for Israel. And we're also seeing an unprecedented burst of activity between Jews and Christians around the world. We're seeing that at rallies. I've spoken at over 100 church services and rallies over the last 3 weeks. And we've seen Jewish leaders together with Christian leaders standing with Israel arm in arm. So it's exciting to see this incredible boost of support from the Christian community. We're using our diplomatic network to not just pressure Iran, but to pressure Qatar. We just released a resolution through the Congressional Israelite Caucus about the statements of the president of Turkey, who called Hamas freedom fighters. But one of the good things that came about this conflict and the war right now is that the lines have been drawn very clearly. Either you're on the sides of people who bake babies in ovens and rape women and send the videos to their families and abduct Holocaust survivors, or you're not. So the lines have been drawn very clearly, and now we can understand who's the bad guy, who's not the bad guy. When people say free Palestine, it's the polite way to say, let's kill all the Jews. And now it's coming out. We're seeing that in the university campuses in America. We're seeing it with the squad in Congress. We're seeing it with the extreme left in Europe and the hundreds of thousands of people that are rallying and ripping down the posters of the hostages. So right now, it's easier to know the difference between good and evil than ever before. And our alliance is dedicated to defending Judeo-Christian values around the world. I'd like to open it up to questions, but before that, just to mention that, and as a practicing Jew, one of the things that's been very heartening to me is to see how many people are coming back to Judaism and to God. One of the first emergency requests that I received was funding to get 60,000 pairs of tzitzit to our soldiers. There's the saying there's no atheist in the foxhole, but people are really turning to God in Israel. And I think that's happening around the world as well, because we know that God is in control and we know that God fights with us. When we don't fight, then we're on our own. But when we fight, God always comes before us. So that is a message that is not just resonating with Jewish people, but with Christian people who believe in the Bible as well. And we're seeing the results through faith-based diplomacy.
I think you very much spoke to why Israel needs Christian support. But maybe if I could flip the question backwards, why do Christians want to support Israel? And maybe another perspective, this war on Hamas, is Hamas targeting Israel? Is it targeting the West? Is it targeting Christianity and Christians as well?
Well, I mean, from a religious point of view, Christians support Israel because God made a covenant with Abraham and they believe it's an everlasting covenant. They see the fulfillment of prophecy right before our very eyes in Israel through the ingathering of the exiles from the north and the south and the east and the west. The deserts have bloomed. We become a light unto the nations through our technology. So they see all these things happening and what God is doing in Israel, and they want to be a part of that. From a practical point of view, you're 100% right, Moshe. They understand that first it's the Saturday people, then the Sunday people. The Hamas leadership came out very forcefully and said, look, our goal is to first wipe out Israel, and then we're coming after all the Christians around the world. And so this is something that is very well understood. And you also have to understand that the big genocides that we've seen in the last decade are not against Jews, they're against Christians. In Northern Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, millions of Christians have been killed just for being Christians. So they are feeling the heat as well. And I think that they understand that Jews and Christians need to unite. And what we're seeing is actually very clear battle lines being drawn. It's Jews and Christians who believe in the Bible on one side, And it's those who hate the Bible and hate the God of Israel on the other side. That's why we see this unholy alliance of radical Islam with extreme atheists. They have absolutely nothing in common. They don't agree on any different issue other than their hatred of Israel. So we're seeing the lines been drawn, and Jews and Christians are coming together like never before.